Cart ruts are mystifying phenomena. There are hundreds of them on the Maltese islands, but they can also be found in other parts of the world as well, including Spain, Turkey, and Italy, to name just a few of those places. Any explanation as to their date and function needs to take into account their distribution. But their varied locations and strange characteristics make it impossible for experts to assign them to any particular culture or purpose. In this video, I go exploring to try and find a cart rut that runs off the edge of a cliff on the Mediterranean island of Malta. Some researchers think it must date to the last ice age when the configuration of the land was different. However, human habitation on Malta didn't begin until thousands of years later. Let's take a walk and see what we can come up with. First things first, I did a comprehensive video on cart ruts, so if you aren't that familiar with them, take a look at that episode and then come back to me here. You're probably wondering why I'm so interested in cart ruts when they aren't megalithic. Well, I think all mysteries of the ancient past are connected in some way or another, and I don't think we can solve these mysteries without taking them all as a whole, and also to some extent understanding what went before and what came after these megalith building cultures. So on my channel, I do skip around a bit. Sometimes I do videos about the Etruscans and the ancient Greek and Roman worlds. Sometimes I go back further into the Mesolithic and the Paleolithic. And sometimes I look at structures or phenomena like the cart ruts, which are not megalithic monuments, but are really interesting and strange in themselves. So with that in mind, let's go. So today I'm going to look for the cart ruts that run off the edge of a cliff. Some people think these are evidence for a lost Ice Age civilization. I don't think they date to the Ice Age, and there are various reasons why I think that, but they are still very strange. So today I've got my measuring stick and I've got my camera. I'm going to take some video footage, some photographs. I'm going to show you guys how wide and deep these parallel tracks are. That's providing I can actually find them in the first place, and that I can get as close as I want to in the car because it's extremely hot today. It's not really a day for hiking. According to the map, there is a road that leads to quite close to where the cart ruts are, but in Malta it often looks like you can get there and then you actually can't. So let's see. I think I'm here. I got lost twice, had to stop and look at my map, but I think I'm here. It's a really pretty part of the island. Very cute. I think there's somewhere around here off the edge of this cliff. I don't see anything. Here's a faint one. This is highly eroded. You can see it continues past this patch of vegetation. Just take a look at that view. Wow, this is pretty long actually. But where's the one that goes over the edge of the cliff? Or several. I think there are several that go over the edge of the cliff from what I've read in books. This cart rut is a lot deeper than the previous one. Look at how clearly cut the parallel track on the right is. That's why I always argue that they are carved or partially carved into the bedrock rather than simply having been worn into it. But then again, sometimes I find examples that look worn, especially where a new track appears to overlap an older, deeper one. So I don't know. I'm going to get my stick out for this one. See what we've got. This cart rut measured 150 centimetres in width, so 59 inches. I took the measurement from the inner sides of each parallel track. In literature, they are usually referred to as being around 141 centimetres in width, so 55.5 inches, which means this one is a little broader. The depth of this one is 75 centimetres, so 29.5 inches. I went to measure this shallower cart rut that we had seen at the beginning of the video. One section measured 160 centimetres, so 62 inches, and then it narrowed slightly to 140 centimetres, so 55 inches. I find this quite strange. If these cart ruts had been made for a specific vehicle, then the variation in width, even by a few centimetres, would surely have been quite impractical and have made it difficult for the transport to pass through. But I guess it depends if it had a loose axis or not. So we found the area where the cliff edge cart ruts are, and we've taken some measurements with the stick I got from my husband for my birthday. Now we need to find the cart ruts or cart rut, I'm not sure if it's one or several, that go off the edge of this cliff. This is an interesting cart rut because it has marks in the middle. One of the arguments against the cart ruts having been created for or by a vehicle, in ancient times, whenever they were in use, self-propelled transport didn't exist. Whether it was a wagon or a sled, people or animals would have needed to drag it along, and they would have worn away the central section over time. Almost none of the cart ruts in Malta show signs of this wear, but this one seems to. It's pretty long, running for around 100 metres and curving slightly. It's also possible that this is actually a modern cart rut in amongst the more ancient ones. I still can't find the ones that go off the edge of the cliff. I mean, that's the cliff that I was just on. Don't know. Certainly they run very close to the edge of it, but the ones I've seen on cameras, in books, I can't find the ones that I've seen in all the books. Still walking, still looking for them. It's very, very hot. It's like 38 degrees today, which I don't know what that is in American. It's a lot in American. Lots of Fahrenheit. And yeah, just don't think I can keep going for so long because I didn't bring water with me. I wasn't planning on an epic hike today, as I said, because it's just very, very hot. And it's not that I don't have stamina, but it's sensible, but it's just not very sensible at this point in time. I'm fairly certain that is one cart rut going off the edge, but the problem is it's extremely overgrown, so you can't really see the right section of it, but you can see the left. Even this section on the path leading around the cliff looks to be an old cart rut that's been worn away in the middle. Look how deep it was originally. I mean, that's almost 80 centimetres, the same as the one that I measured earlier. I mean, this one's not doing too bad in its approach towards the edge, but it's still not shooting off the edge. The photographs I've seen of a cart shooting off the edge of this particular set of cliffs, it has to be here somewhere. It's clear how deep some of them are. I should think they were all deep originally. Perhaps the shallow ones are just extremely eroded. Also, the depth makes them seem fairly impractical for vehicles. At this point, I thought I could see it in the distance, but there was a lot of rough ground and vegetation between me and it, so I had to figure out a safe way of clambering over there. And here it is. This is the cart rut that goes off the edge of a cliff. I think there's only one. I can't see any others. It's a very shallow section just here. There's a very shallow section just here, and then the land falls away or has been eroded. And then you get to the next part of the cart rut where it's very deep on the right side, and the left side unfortunately has fallen away, but you can still see a little bit of it, a little bit of the trough of the rut. Wow, that's amazing. And yeah, I mean, you could say maybe due to more recent seismic activity rather than the land changes at the end of the last ice age, you could say that the land sort of fell away, and this probably used to skirt the edge of the cliff. Although it doesn't seem to be going in the right direction for that. It really seems like it's heading for that hill with no land in between, which is actually quite strange. I wasn't expecting that. That was a hot day out. You're probably thinking, why can I not find cart ruts? They seem so obvious. Well, actually, sometimes they're very overgrown. Sometimes it depends on the angle you're approaching them from. If you're walking so that they are at an angle to you, they're not obvious at all in the landscape. So there's that. And then sometimes I'll see them on Google Earth and they're like, just look like they're on a sort of patch of rock at the side of the road. But when I get there, it's a very high piece of rock. It's like virtually a cliff edge that needs to be climbed up, and there's no access from the other side because it's on private property or whatever. So actually trying to build up a whole kind of database of all the cart ruts is not that easy. Here it is again, gorgeous, isn't it? I was so happy when I finally found it, because on many trips I actually don't find what I'm looking for. I'm back. I don't make megalith hunting look very attractive. My hair is frizzy, I'm sweating still, even with the car air conditioning on. That was quite the little outing, but it was fun. It really isn't that easy to find all the cart ruts. Sometimes the vegetation coverage is so thick that even if you can see it on an old aerial image or on Google Earth, it might not be that visible in the landscape anymore when you actually get there. Also, getting hold of GPS locations isn't easy. In old documents, the grid references that are used don't really make any sense to me. I have no idea what maps they're referring to. What I find amazing is how so many cart ruts are in sets like this area I visited. Sometimes they're on their own, but there are many examples of sets of cart ruts. More than just the most famous set known as Clapham Junction. The ancients were doing something very interesting, but we don't know what or when. Cart ruts are thought to be Bronze Age, but not older because they don't lead up to any of the Neolithic temples. However, there's really not that much to go on in terms of dating them. There's a possibility they were early Punic, so later than the Bronze Age, but before the Romans. Considering there aren't many texts or inscriptions from that period, I guess it's possible. If there were many texts and no cart ruts were mentioned, then that would be strange. But in my opinion, these are very ancient, not Ice Age though. There really is no evidence for human habitation in Malta at that time. But I'm drawn to the idea they could have been created by the temple people. They don't lead up to the temples themselves, but so what? There was probably 100 temples or more on the islands at that time. The temple people were prolific builders, and clearly the population was big enough to need a lot of sanctuaries. So perhaps they needed a very comprehensive transport system as well. I don't know what the vehicle would have been though. I also wonder if the islands were a bit wetter at that time. Perhaps the dry river valleys weren't dry yet. Malta has barely any Malta is full of dry river valleys. I wonder if the islands were a bit wetter at that time. Perhaps the dry river valleys weren't quite dry yet. And maybe there's a link to waterways or something like that, maybe between this transport system and the waterways, especially if all the river valleys had some water in them, because there are so many river valleys on Malta. I'll visit some more, take some more measurements, and keep building my database. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Take a look at my other episodes on the mysteries of the ancient world, and I'll see you next time.